A little slow tonight, isn't it?
Welcome to another episode of GRC After Hours, where we connect the world of governance, risk, and compliance, that's GRC, to pop culture. I'm your host, Michael Rasmussen, the GRC Pundit and Analyst with GRC 2020 Research and the GRC Report. And tonight, we're taking it to the court. The basketball court, that is. That's right, we're talking NBA, Milwaukee Bucks, basketball, and yes, of course, the Greek freak himself, Giannis.
Gotcha.
So joining me today is Kyle Martin, the Vice President of Product Management at Navex. Gosh, I've known Navex for a long time. I did a lot of the due diligence work when Navex was formed. A lot of different companies come together. And so, and Navex itself is an all-star in its own right when it comes to GRC. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, thanks.
What have you brought us to enjoy today?
So I brought a boot flask of the Garrison Brothers Texas Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So I grew up in Texas. I'm sure the Mavericks might slip into our conversation today as well. But Texas has had a boom lately. This is my favorite whiskey coming from the Lone Star State. So we'll see what you think of it here in Milwaukee.
And you wore a Milwaukee Bucks jersey, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I was at, I don't remember which game it was specifically, but I was at Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 against the Hawks. My wife and I were here, and we went and had an amazing time, and I bought this shirt. And, we've been fans generally since then. She's got her team, I got my team, but we always root for the Bucks. So, yeah, of course.
That's great. Bucks are great.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. You want to pour us some?
Absolutely. Here. Start first here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's good. And from Texas, huh?
And from Texas. Just like me. I'm a fan.
Kyle, it's hitting me.
You're good.
Kyle, we've known each other for years. I'm not sure how many years. I haven't counted them, but it's been probably going on a decade of some sort.
We're getting close, yeah, for sure.
So, but give our audience some background on yourself, and of course, after that, first you, and what interests you and drives you professionally, and even personally. But then after that, Navex, and what some of the great things Navex is doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I think what's funny about hearing you say you've known Navex for a long time, you've probably known Navex longer than I have, to tell you the truth, as part of the acquisition of Lockpath. But, for me personally, started in the compliance space, 15 years ago, probably, really working in the payment card industry and the compliance space from there, and developing a real appreciation for everything it takes for businesses to move through the world of GRC, the world of risk management, the world of compliance, again, more in that PCI space, but then the opportunity beyond that to start consulting and to start actually helping customers build those programs. We've got some really, really cool, impressive things on the resume from helping really large companies build their own control frameworks and moving through those processes. And I think one of the cool parts about GRC is you've got this amazing blend of the process with the technology. And so I don't know if you get the same personal satisfaction from, it's almost like simply building that new calculation in an Excel formula, right? You made it work. You made that thing happen. You made it come to life. And so I get a lot of personal enjoyment from that. And being able to translate that into Navex in my professional career has been pretty natural, I think. And at Navex, we're the leaders in the world of ethics and compliance, and we're growing our risk management space. And that's why I'm there, and that's why I get to do what I do. So being able to take our incident management programs that are all over the world, build more around whether it's policy or training or all of the amazing things that kind of go into that world of the compliance buyer, but also, risk management and GRC and integrated risk management and IT and third party and all those topics that are, all-encompassing. We do it all at Navex, but trying to optimize that experience for our buyers, our customers, it's huge for us. So again, if you're watching this podcast and I haven't seen you at a conference, I feel like I've been almost traveling as much as you, even though I think that might be impossible. Just being able to interact and do stuff like this It's great.
Well, I'm glad you can be here today.
Yeah, me too.
Now, the GRC After Hours, it's sort of like based on a pop culture reference. I mean, the very first one was Cards Against Humanity GRC edition, and we have had Star Trek and Game of Thrones. The last episode we did was a blues episode, but your interest and passion is basketball. Tell us a little bit about what makes you interested in basketball. What brought you to that?
Yeah, I love basketball. So I think where it starts for me is I'm a fifth generation Kansas Jayhawk, and if you're a Kansas Jayhawk, you love basketball. I don't think there's any variable there. So grew up watching college basketball and developing an appreciation for that. I've been to 10 Final Fours. I'm a season ticket holder for KU, but I grew up in Texas, and so the Mavericks and we played in the finals in 2006. Didn't go our way. We got it back in 2011. Not so different than I think some of the Bucks stories. We've got our one. We're excited about that. But then, as I became a parent and I became a dad, I have two sons, and they both play basketball. So not only am I taking them to KU games and going to the KU games myself and all that, and just living through that, but I coach. So I coach my third graders team and my kindergartners team. And yesterday, before I flew to Milwaukee, we finished the third and fourth games of our weekend tournament, and then I coached a kindergarten practice session, and I went to the airport and flew up here. So
fun.
I've had 4 basketball games last weekend and a practice, and again, just it's part of my life, whether it's as a fan or now as a coach, and I can't imagine it not being part of my life.
NBA is basketball is a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
I was just in Paris last week, and the 4 gentlemen I went out to lunch with, all they wanted to talk about was basketball, and they love American basketball.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's
huge. Yeah.
And so, who are your favorite teams?
Yeah, so for me, it's the Dallas Mavericks at the professional level. Although Eastern Conference, good company here. I'll root for the Bucks, and I think my 2021 experience had a lot to do with that. At the college level, Rock Chalk Jayhawk all day long. Shout out to all my friends in Lawrence, the Kansas City area. And yeah, that's it. My wife is from Colorado. She's a big Nuggets fan, and the Nuggets, one of their key rotational players is a guy named Christian Brown who played at KU. So that's been a fun part for our family as well. I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, so they're gonna root for whoever's winning. And right now the Nuggets are winning, so they're good. And the Mavericks were good last year too, so we're in a good spot in our household.
Excellent. So let's get to the court and just. Well, of course, my team is the Bucks.
Right.
We have season tickets to the Bucks.
Yes.
I wish there were planes I can take you tonight since you came all the way to Milwaukee.
It's all right. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
We'll do it again.
So now let's get to the court and discuss basketball and GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. How can we relate these things? Just like the Bucks game plan on the court, every organization needs a solid strategy when it comes to governance, risk, and compliance. And that's where we're going to draw some parallels today. So it's tip-off time here. The GRC game plan. All right, Kyle, let's break it down. Every NBA team or basketball team in just general goes into the season with a playbook.
Right.
A strategy built on scouting reports, strengths, and game plans. But what happens when things don't go as planned? Coaches call timeouts, make adjustments, and get agile. Just like Giannis here in the Bucks, pulling off a spin move, a Euro step, or throwing down a monster dunk.
Giannis trailing the lob.
In GRC, it's no different. Organizations need their own playbook to stay ahead of regulatory change, emerging risks, and unexpected challenges. So tell me, what's the GRC equivalent of a team's playbook, and how does it help organizations stay agile in fast-paced environments, internal controls, the enterprise risk frameworks, and all this? The GRC playbook.
GRC playbook. It might be more complicated than a coach's playbook for starters, for sure. I think where we get, and this will be a theme that comes out, I think, more as we talk today, is for so many organizations, GRC feels like such a complicated topic, and I think the way you kind of line that question out, you can see why it gets there. And so when you're first kind of going through what's the playbook, how do we do these things, I think a lot of it's based on really two main ideas. One is the communication strategy within the business. Who's responsible for different areas? So and how do those groups communicate? I think in GRC we talk about this idea of a committee quite a bit. And people don't want more meetings; they don't want more committees. I think that's a universal truth. But I think it also, that concept is what should really ring true here. Is that thread of communication, understanding what we're responsible for, and we're trying to achieve the same objectives. We're on the same team. So whether it's a racy model, whether it's business hierarchy, but some kind of ownership and responsibility so that we can work through these things in a very organic and practical way. I think it'd be easy for me to say, well, buy a GRC platform. But I think we both know the GRC platform is only as good as the processes and the data that you put in it. So let's figure out those pieces first, make sure we have the right people.
One of my most frustrating things is when a company calls me up, and this like happened to the large insurance company.
Right.
We just bought GRC. Now come and tell us how to do GRC. It's
Right.
like, don't you have a playbook before you bought the solution? What are you trying to do?
And it happens all the time, Michael. I mean, we want this thing to work automatically. It's like, well, does it work manually? Well, no. Well, then it's not going to work automatically. It's just not how this thing works. And the platform's the same way. We're not going to be able to make the perfect workflow if there's not a good process internally. And that kind of brings you to that second area, which probably would have failed at the company you just referenced. But what are our strategic objectives as a business? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's why I love basketball actually as a GRC topic, is that when you think about basketball as a GRC topic, or any really basic topic, but you can pick any sport, right? I mean, basketball is what we're talking about today, but what's your strategic objective? Well, we can start with you trying to win the game. Like that's a nice, easy one. But in basketball, it's interesting. It's a long season. Maybe you're playing that guy that doesn't quite fit in yet with the rotation, but you're going to need him in the playoffs. You're going to need him in the tournament. So you need to play him now. So your objective is to get your team to be more seasoned and more competitive. What are the things you have to go through? There's risks with that. There's all kinds of interesting upside to deal with, but short-term downside. But if you don't know what the strategic objectives are, you can't make those decisions. And if your goal is to win the game as a basketball coach, that changes a lot of things of what you do. Right? As a third grade basketball coach, I have strategic objectives that include win the game, but I also have to make sure every kid on my team plays at least 15 minutes. Trust me, every kid on my team wouldn't play 15 minutes. My only objective was to win the game. And so you have to balance those things as an organization, but it starts with understanding what they are.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand what they are, none of that other stuff really matters.
Yeah. You watch a college and professional game, and there's so much technology behind analyzing everything,
Yes.
And tracking things. What's the role of technology in GRC then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to take you from that lower maturity, that entry level, the conversation, the areas we just talked about, into a more proactive state. I mean, I think that's the most natural way to really think through it. Technology that's focused around GRC is what helps you move from the reactive methodologies of spreadsheets and emails and SharePoint and whatever, to understanding here's where everything is, here's how it's tracked and maintained and managed through my entire life cycle, so that I don't have to be beholden to when the auditor calls me, or when we have the new reg change, or we have this thing that we're fully responding to, because organizations are doing all of that today, whether they're going to say how they're doing it or not. They have to comply with something, they go through that process, they deal with it, they move on to the next thing. But when you can make that more proactive, now you're getting better return within your business, you're getting better efficiency within your business, your resources are being used more strategically, and at the end of the day, that's what your executives and your board are going to care about. Have we optimized the value of our dollar? Are we invested in the right things? And are we getting the return? And that's what technology enables you to start down the process of. Now, it doesn't get you from I'm reactive to I'm fully optimized. There's a lot of steps in between there, but it helps you start down that path for sure.
Definitely. So let's move on to defense. They say defense wins championships. From blocking shots to forcing turnovers, it's all about protecting the rim.
Gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball.
In GRC, we're also playing defense. We have things like defense in depth, and we have things like the 3 lines of defense, now just called the 3 lines model. It's all about protecting, the organization. But instead of blocking layups, we're protecting the organization from threats, whether that's cyber risk, third-party risk, or compliance violations. That's why you've got to have your defensive anchor, your Giannis, Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, etc., so others. Every GRC program needs its superstar, the person or system that's always there to protect and respond. In some companies, that's the chief compliance officer, others it's the chief risk officer, or maybe it's even in today's, an AI-driven risk management officer and approach. Who do you think is the defensive anchor in organizations, and why?
So what I love about the way you asked this question, by the way, is I think for a lot of organizations, who does this is polarizing, and you pick two of the most polarizing people in all of basketball, which is Rudy Gobert and Draymond Green. So I appreciate that aspect of it.
Yep, he choking.
He's just holding Clay.
He choking.
He don't even have him around the neck. Stop it.
But I think ideally it's risk. Now, what's interesting about risk, especially when you're dealing with the SMB, the mid-market, they may not have a dedicated, carved-out risk function. I think risk often sits within different groups, whether that's an IT, which is, third party sits in IT. IT seems to capture a lot of the world of GRC and has for a long time. You can see resilience come through. You could see compliance. But I think in an ideal state, it's risk, because they see not only the necessity of playing defense, they see how that can convert to offense, right? They see the upside. They see the ability to translate that into something that is more compelling, more ROI for the business. And so I think that's your perfect answer. I think for most organizations, especially the ones we deal with, it's compliance. And I think we'll get to this a little bit down the road too. But compliance, the issue there can be, doesn't have to be, but can be, now we're just checking a box. And if all we're doing is rolling our biggest, tallest players out there on defense, we're really just checking a box. We might need that group that understands how to translate, understands how to steal the ball, understands how to do more than just stand on the court and play your positional defense. We need that IQ, and that IQ comes with risk. And so wherever we can put that into the business, that's the most impactful answer. But again, I think naturally, and I'd be curious in your thoughts here too, but I think that's where you see organizations maturing, is that more carved out, dedicated risk function. But the practical nature of GRC is that a lot of companies aren't there yet.
Yeah, and there's different roles, and this question is sort of a trick question, because for some it might be a compliance officer, others it might be a risk officer. It depends on the industry, the maturity of the role, the executive engagement with that role,
right,
and so many factors.
Right.
So building on this, the starting five, we can have a little fun with this. Every NBA team has its starting five, and I'm going to put you on the spot. First off, I'm curious, who are your favorite players in basketball? Who's your all-star starting five team?
Oh my gosh, all-star starting five team. All right, so we've been talking a lot of NBA, NBA. So my favorite NBA player of all time is Dirk Nowitzki.
Nowitzki from way downtown. Yes! Come on.
The
NY,
right? So he's, Mavericks legend, plays whole career there, which you barely see anymore. There's a couple guys that check a box there, but that's really just Dirk. Brought us a championship. So fun to watch. So revolutionary, 7-footer hitting jump shots all over the floor. Before his time in a lot of ways, but he was able to kind of navigate that through to the era that's there now. And then I'll take another Maverick, and that's Luka Doncic in terms of current guys. And again, I'm playing Homer here, and I recognize that. But Luka's amazing, and the things he's able to do offensively, and the way he sees the court and sees the game, it's different. And so we're gonna go back. I'll pull my KU ties here a little bit. Paul Pierce, amazing player for KU, and got his title in the NBA with the Celtics, which is great. I don't know if you've ever gone back and watched old film of Wilt Chamberlain, but I'm not. I'm on the spot, so I'm pulling some names here. I'm trying to think through my starting five. But Wilt Chamberlain, a freak athlete in his time. You got the freak in Milwaukee now, but the things Wilt did, and the way that basketball molded itself to rules around how to think about guys like Wilt. If Wilt was fully locked in mentally all the time, he would have won a lot more titles. He had some other interests in his world than just basketball, but Wilt did okay. And then I'll take one that played for the Mavericks, but was maybe not as well known for the Mavericks, and I had a chance to watch him do a clinic. One of the things I've been able to do in my basketball career is work with the National Association of Basketball Coaches and do Special Olympics clinics over the years. Not as much anymore, but for a long time I was involved in that area of what they did at the convention. And Steve Nash did a clinic with Special Olympics, and so watching him engage at that level, watching what he was able to accomplish as I'm not a tall guy, I'm about 6 feet tall. I got a little bit on Steve Nash, and this guy's Hall of Famer, multi-time MVP. So it's always amazing too what you can see when you don't have the Wilt Chamberlain physical attributes. So I think it's a pretty good starting five. We'll go with we've got Luka and Steve Nash up top. We got Pierce and Nowitzki. Nowitzki playing a little bit of stretch 4 and Wilt down low. I'll take that. I'll take my chances.
You didn't mention, but are you a Giannis fan?
I'm a Giannis fan.
Okay.
I think what he does is unbelievable. And what's really cool about Giannis, I remember the day he was drafted, and they're like, this guy has all the potential in the world if he can find it. And then he found it. And how often is that the case? And so, yeah, he got drafted where he did on potential, and that's the NBA in a nutshell. But the guys who get there, I mean, it's cool. So, yeah, he's a freak, and it's fun to watch.
And he's just a good person, too.
Yeah. Seems to be great for the city of Milwaukee. Yeah.
So, who's your starting 5 in GRC? Which 5 key players or pillars are must-haves for a winning GRC strategy and program? For examples, is risk management the point guard, driving action and running the offense? Perhaps internal audit is a small forward and wing, versatile and able to play to both sides of the court? What are your thoughts? So who's the starting 5 in GRC?
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is harder or easier to answer. I've got less people to choose from, but harder to fit in. So I think we're starting point guard. I think we're going to take our executive team to the board. I think we're going to put them at point. They got to dictate the team. They've got to tell us where to go. They've got to tell us where to be. But the good ones know what everybody's doing as well. They know where everybody's supposed to be. So not only are they driving it, they're helping people know where to go when they don't know where to go. So I think they're the point guard. I think where risk plays, and there's great examples of this all through basketball. I think risk is your 3-and-D wing. Maybe you're 2, just to kind of play my analogy out here. But they're 3-and-D. So we've got the offense, we've got the upside risk from our ability to shoot the ball. But we're playing defense. We're a lockdown defender. You know risk is going to be on their best player every single time. So let's put our risk professionals in that role. And so I think your internal audit folks, I'm going to put them in 2 positions. I'm going to put them on the wing, like you said, but they're your glue guys. You know, your glue guys on the wing. So yeah, they're not necessarily going for 20 a night. And sometimes you wish they were a little bit better offensively. You shoot the ball a little better. But the truth is like without them, you're a little bit lost. They're the ones who are pulling the organization together. The good ones, again, having the right conversations. Who's part of that? Who's going into the right parts of the business, engaging the right people to get us the right outcomes. And I'm gonna put compliance at center. And here's why. I think compliance at center. A bad center is probably still about 7 feet tall, right? They're gonna get you some basic stuff. They're going to check the box. Hey, this person's a center, we're good. But the good ones have developed their offensive game. They've got a little bit of touch around the basket. They can facilitate. They're game changers. And you see that come through. They've maybe been able to stretch their game out. Now they're a little pick and pop. They're hitting threes. But yeah, I think I'll put them in the middle.
Love it.
That work?
Yeah, it's great. So now let's go and look for a little GRC fast break.
Booker knocked away. The defense by Lively. The run by Kyrie. Oh, my goodness.
I'll give you a quick GRC scenario. You've got to drop your best strategy, ready to go. So first up,
okay.
A new regulation drop, and it's a game changer for your industry. What's your move?
Scouting report. I'm going scouting report immediately. I'm going to figure out who this applies. I'm going to call Michael Rasmussen. I'm going to say, Michael, what does this mean for me? What do I need to do about it? Because depending on where that thing's coming from, you don't know when it's going to impact your industry, and you don't know how it's going to impact your industry. If it's coming from Europe, it's probably got a little bit of time before it impacts you, but it's probably got teeth to it. It's probably got real penalty. That means a lot, right, to our compliance professionals. If it's coming from the U.S., it probably has no teeth to it. That's how things have been lately. And it might be an executive order, something that was quick. But it might impact my local jurisdiction or where I do business. And then where it gets really hairy, obviously, is you're a U.S. company or you're doing business in Europe. And you've got to figure out the cross-border impacts of where we're operating. But yeah, no, I think that's it. I'm scouting report. I'm immediately figuring out how does this impact us, why does it impact us, and I'm calling people who have probably been researching it a lot longer than I have.
Excellent. So next play. A critical vendor has a data breach. What's the first step?
Yeah, actually, I did a podcast on this for Navex Next this year, where I brought in a former auditor of mine from my compliance lab, and this was actually our topic. We did a "You've been breached, now what?" And in this case, I'm actually calling I'm calling my insurance company. I'm calling my cyber insurance company because I want to bring the auditors in immediately. I want to start working through those processes. I want them to tell me what to do. I'm calling my lawyers. And I want to work through that process. And third party is a wrinkle there, I recognize, because it may not impact us internally. But again, I want to bring in professionals to go through that. Picking up the phone and yelling at your third party is probably not going to be super productive. But if you can understand how to kind of work through that through whatever cyber insurance and cyber remediation process you have, which again, hopefully everybody does in 2024. We were selling this in PCI 12 years ago. They'll tell you what to do and how to manage it. And I think that's an overlooked part of this. Everybody just wants to go shut everything down and do this and that. It's like hold on. Let's call the right people and go through the right process.
Final one. Your audit finds a compliance gap. It's the fourth quarter and you're behind. What do you do?
Yeah, compliance gap. Fourth quarter and behind. This is a good question. I don't know if I've got a quick answer to this one. I think what you're doing. It'd be easier for me to say scouting report again, but I think what you have to evaluate is that compliance gap. Is it? Am I at risk of a breach? Am I doing something? Has it actually given me a problem? Because compliance gaps where I think this trips me up a bit. Because compliance gap might mean I'm just failing something, but does it actually have any tangible impact to my business? I mean, we could put compensating controls around that. We could say like this is meaningless. You're trying to upgrade to a different server stack, upgraded operating system, and honestly, there's no reason to do it other than the fact that one you're on now is going to be end of life in 5 years. That might not be a good strategic decision for my business. I think that's what I'm doing is I'm understanding what's the actual impact. Like, let's bring in some risk terminology, right? So the likelihood of it, it's found in an audit, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm going to assume the likelihood is relatively small. The impact is what we have to evaluate. Chances are the impact's not super high, but if it was to happen, let's figure out where that sits. Is it super low, or is it kind of in the middle of the spectrum? And we evaluate and we try to put some financial metrics around it. I'm not a big disclaimer. I love the concept of risk quantification. I don't want to go over head over heels on risk quantification. I want to do it in a practical way. This is the time to do it. What's it impacting my business, and then you go. So I answered within 30 seconds. I'm not sure I finished my answer within 30 seconds, but I think that's what I have to do is I have to understand my impact.
Excellent. Quick and strategic. That's how you win in basketball. That's how you win in GRC. Nice work. And before we close, any other thoughts you wanted to bring that we didn't cover?
I think, when we brought up this topic, obviously I'm passionate about basketball. I hope that came through to our viewers here on the podcast.
Certainly did.
So it was easy for me, and not only did we want to talk about basketball because I want to talk about basketball, but because you're gonna have guests in the future that can keep up on your other topics that you pitch to me much better than I can, and I'm excited to watch those. But what I love about GRC and why I've been in this space as long as I have, and I keep moving people forward in this space, is that I want to try to get rid of this like almost imposter syndrome we have in GRC. I know I said GRC or GRC. And in imposter syndrome, what I say to that is I feel like everybody feels like they have to be further along than they really are. And so when you can bring things back to topics like sports, I love that concept. And when you watch a basketball game, there's all kinds of risk management happening in real time. Football would be kind of easier to do in some ways. You'd be like, everybody's calling out their spreadsheets, right? They're like, well, it says go for 2 here. It says go for 4th down here. In basketball, you don't have that luxury. In college basketball, I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Pomeroy, but Ken Pomeroy has a whole analytics site, and I'm there almost every day. And one of his stats is 2 foul avoidance. And what does that mean for the risk professional or the basketball coach? It means I'm going to play a guy that has fouls in the first half, and so I'm running a risk of him picking up another foul, and now I can't use him as long in the game. So the upside is I play him, and maybe I don't fall as far behind, or I can build my lead more. The downside is that I can't play him later. And what's cool about that from a risk management perspective is what are the things in risk that are really important that people skip out on? Is one of those things is boxing it into time. What's the time of this risk exception? What does this apply to? What's the impact within this time period? Well, basketball gives you that. Especially if you're doing first half foul avoidance. Well, is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? These are all very different conversations. And in the NBA, one of the big ones, and at all levels, is would you foul up 3 late Or, I don't know, they're coming down the floor with 6 seconds left, you foul them, do they go to the free throw line? You have to make that decision like right now. But you also have to have practiced that. You have to arrive the right personnel on the floor. You have to do it at exactly the right time. And so there's all these variables. And isn't that GRC in a nutshell? Like, if this was easy, it wouldn't be a whole industry. There wouldn't be all this software behind it. You and I wouldn't be sitting here drinking bourbon and having a discussion. And the variables would make it interesting. But getting back to the very first question you asked me around strategic objectives, first GRC question around, I should say, around strategic objectives. If you don't know what you're trying to accomplish as a business, none of this really matters. And so I think, again, I like to translate GRC topics back into simple things. You know, we've got a sales team. We're trying to get them to understand how do you sell risk? How do you make this relatable to your buyer? And we're out at conferences. We're having these conversations. And I don't really want to be seen as the guy that works for the software company telling you to buy our software. We want to be out in the industry. We want to be helping people move through these problems. Yeah. And if you want to use our software to support that, that would be great, because not only do you get to work with our software, which I think is fantastic, you get to work with me, and then that makes me happy. But really, if the industry doesn't see the value, none of our software products matter. We're all kind of in this together in the end. So I'm hopeful we keep translating things like this, whether it's to basketball or anything else, to the buyer, because that's who we'll leave behind if we don't. And so I think we want to keep doing that in the industry, and I would kind of leave us as that as a topic to wrap on. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. That's the buzzer, folks. Huge thanks to Kyle for being a true MVP in GRC on today's episode. Just like the Milwaukee Bucks, every organization's GRC program needs strategy, defense, agility, and a Giannis-like anchor. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your GRC starting five in the chat. Until next time, stay compliant and stay in the game. For now, we'll leave you with a small clip from Martin Scorsese's satire masterpiece, After Hours.
Give the check. It's on the house. Really? Sure, what the hell. Different rules apply when it gets this late, you know what I mean? It's like after hours.